All right, let's talk about John Locke's incredible idea. A government that's actually built to serve us, the people, and not the other way around. This is basically the blueprint for keeping power on a leash. You know, it's the ultimate political puzzle, isn't it? How do you give a government enough power to protect everyone's rights, but not so much power that it ends up crushing those very same rights? This was the exact problem that kept thinkers like John Locke up at night. So you kind of had two big answers on the table back then. On one side, you've got Thomas Hobbes. His view is pretty stark. To escape a life that's just chaotic and awful, we have to hand over all our power to one absolute ruler. But then John Locke comes along with this totally different, pretty radical idea. A government that has limited powers, and its authority comes directly from the consent of the people it governs. Now, to really get where they're coming from, we have to rewind. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. Just try to imagine a world with no governments, no rulers, no laws. Philosophers called this the state of nature. What would that even look like?
Well, for Hobbes, it was pretty grim. He imagined a war of all against all, just total chaos. But Locke? He was way more optimistic. He believed that even without a king or president, we're all guided by something he called natural law. It's this built-in sense of reason that tells us, hey, you shouldn't harm another person's life, their liberty, or their stuff. These are our natural rights, and we're just born with them.
So you might be thinking, if life in this state of nature isn't a complete disaster, why would we even bother with government? Well, because even with natural law, you're going to have disagreements. It's messy. And that's why we willingly come together to create a government. But the terms of that agreement, oh, they are absolutely crucial. And that agreement is what we call the social contract. And this idea is a total game changer. We, the people, agree to be governed. But listen, it is not a blank check. We're only doing it for one single reason, so that the government will protect the natural rights we already have. That's the deal. It's a two-way street. And Locke's take on this contract is really interesting. He saw it as a two-step process. First, we all get together and decide to form a community, a civil society. And then, and this is the important part, that society creates a government to be its agent. I mean, this is huge. It means the government works for us, not the other way around. It's our employee. So, what this all boils down to is one simple, incredibly powerful idea. For John Locke, political power isn't about domination or some divine right of kings. It's all about trust. We, the people, entrust the government with the power to protect us. And just like any trust, if it's broken, the whole deal is off. Okay, so if government is a trust, what are the terms and conditions? What's in the fine print? Well, Locke laid out a very clear set of rules for the rulers, a blueprint for what a legitimate government absolutely cannot do. Think of these as the chains Locke wanted to put on power. The government can't just make up rules as it goes along. No, it has to govern by established public laws that everyone knows. It can't just destroy its own people or take their property without their consent. And it definitely cannot just hand off its lawmaking power to someone else or, trample on those fundamental rights we're all born with. And what's the whole point of all these rules? Well, it's to secure the peace and safety of the people. It's about serving the public good, fairly, consistently, under a set of rules that applies to absolutely everyone, including the rulers themselves. But this brings us to the most radical part of his whole theory. What happens if the government just ignores the rules? What if it breaks that sacred trust? Well, Locke gave an answer that would literally change the world. The people have an ultimate failsafe. It is really that simple and that revolutionary. If the government starts acting against the people's interests, if it violates that social contract, it loses its right to govern. It's no longer legitimate. And in that moment, all the power it was given snaps right back to the society that created it in the first place. And hey, don't just take my word for it. In Locke's own words, the people always, always keep a supreme power to get rid of a government that betrays them. I mean, wow. This isn't just a polite suggestion. It's the very foundation of popular sovereignty. It's the right to revolution. So what was the real-world impact of all these ideas from the 1600s? Honestly, it's almost impossible to overstate it. Locke's blueprint for a limited government didn't just stay in books. It fundamentally changed the course of history. His work became the bedrock for so many of the freedoms we take for granted today. I mean, he's called the father of modern liberalism for a reason. The idea of government by the consent of the governed, the separation of powers, the protection of individual rights, these are all Lockean ideas. They provided the intellectual fuel for the American and French revolutions, and pretty much all modern democracies since. And here he is, the man himself, John Locke, a thinker who had the guts to argue that the people should be the masters of their own government. His ideas weren't just abstract philosophy, they were a call to action. Which of course brings us to a final, really important question for our own time. When you look at the world, when you look at the actions of governments today, do you think they're still operating within that sacred trust? Are they still playing by Locke's rules? It's definitely a question worth asking.